Now, political turmoil continues to destabilize the government in South Sudan. President Salva Kiir on Tuesday swore in Taban Deng Gai as the first Vice President of South Sudan to replace Riek Machar, whose whereabouts are unknown since he fled Juba 2 weeks ago following fighting between the two men's rival forces. After his acceptance speech, in which he talked about his three priorities: ending the fighting, making sure the IDPs can return home, and merging the two armies into one, Deng Gai told John Tanza, managing editor of VOA's South Sudan in Focus, that the government must function as the government of national unity and as, quote, a government for everybody. He says the government must offer positive messages and the citizens must help their government address the issues. And joining me in the studio is Robin Sanders, former U.S. ambassador to Nigeria and Congo. She is currently the CEO of FEEEDS Advocacy Initiative. Ambassador Sanders, welcome to Africa 54.
Pleasure to be here.
Looking at what has taken place and the latest development in South Sudan, what do you make of this latest move to swear in Taban Deng Gai to replace Riek Machar, whose whereabouts are unknown?
Yeah, that is, I think the entire situation, I served in Sudan as a diplomat and covered it on the policy side. And I think that it's worrisome to everyone that the situation there is so fragile. It's fragile politically, it's fragile on a humanitarian level, and it's certainly fragile on the security level. Swearing in Deng Gai really is just, I would say, incidental to some of the issues that I just pointed out. It has always been a very, very tenuous marriage between Kiir and Machar. I think that Machar has probably fled Juba, where I've spent some time, probably out of concern for his own safety, probably. Before in 2013, Kiir had also sacked Machar then. So it was always an uneasy relationship, and I don't think the trust was ever there to really have a government of national unity as was envisioned by the international community and the people of Sudan. I think that right now it's extremely important to try to find a way to dampen down the tensions, because what you have right now is not only the verge of a humanitarian disaster with all of the refugees traveling into Uganda, but you also have, a possibility of the country spiraling into some sort of civil war.
So do you think those are some of the challenges that currently might face the government of Salva Kiir? And what do you think also this means to the Riek Machar camp?
Well, I think that it really is kind of a nail in the coffin for the Machar camp, because he realizes now, I think, that whatever mistrust he had with his partner in government has probably played itself out. So I think that hopefully there will be a dialogue that will include the African Union, that will include the international community through the UN, to find a way to dampen down tensions and try to find a way to move forward.
You know, there are reports that Salva Kiir gave Riek Machar about 48 hours to report back to Juba, right. And if not, then he went ahead and, of course, he has now been replaced. Do you think this is a reason to really violate the peace pact that was just recently renewed?
Well, I think that, as I said at the beginning, the two men never trusted each other well. And I think that probably, from Machar's point of view, I think he really was concerned about his safety if he was in Juba. That's already happened. It's water under the bridge. The question now is, how do you move forward so that you don't have a continuing security situation where people are fleeing for their lives? I think you have a combination of refugees that are fleeing because they were in the midst of conflict, but you also have people fleeing because they think the situation is going to deteriorate into another civil war. And
Ambassador Sanders, one of the biggest concerns right now is that we haven't really been able to hear anything much from the regional body, the IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority and Development, that has been mediating this in South Sudan. Also from the African Union, that just recently had a summit in Kigali where they were supposed to focus on South Sudan issues. What's your take?
Well, I think the African Union itself has to figure out what role it wants to have going forward in the 21st century. I think that's a real challenge for the institution. Particularly, I think it's evident by they couldn't identify a chairperson for the body. They did raise Sudan. You heard Salvador Kiir say there that he would not accept any additional foreign intervention. You had a similar thing happen in Burundi, with Burundi saying the same thing. So we've got to figure out what is going on there, that there is not an acceptance of having AU troops there. The last thing that the AU did say was that they were looking at having a forced intervention, and I just don't think that's realistic to do, because then you set the troops up to be targets of attack if they're not welcomed by the sitting government. I think with IGAD, your point to your question is, IGAD has the same role of trying to find a way, trying to broker another peace deal. So really you need all the parties to come together. You need the South Sudanese parties, you need IGAD, you need the AU, and I do think you need the United Nations there as part of that. They are everybody's stakeholders in protecting the safety and the well-being of the average South Sudanese. That's got to be the priority. And so what is going to help you do that? I have a few points that on that I think might happen. If Kiir is not going to accept a force per se, would he accept at least a limited presence that provides a buffer zone for the civilians? And concurrently with that, could you then begin dialogue that would be under the auspices of IGAD, the AU, and possibly the United Nations?
And very briefly, Ambassador Sanders, Taban Deng has said that if Riek Machar shows up today, he will get off the post and let him take on. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, if that's possible, then that would be good, but you still have the original problem. That doesn't change the original distrust between the two leaders. And as long as that's still there, you're still going to have these fits and starts. He was sacked in 2013, he's been sacked now. Are we just going to have a constant roller coaster of him being in and out? I don't think that that's good for the country either. Well,
we'll be watching developments, and certainly you will be, and let us know what you think should be the way forward. Ambassador Sanders, thank you very much. Ambassador Robin Sanders is CEO of FEEEDS Advocacy Initiative and former U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria and Congo.